Hey, welcome back to our channel. I'm Eric, and as you can see from the title of this video, I wanted to touch on a topic that is often discussed in the menswear space, as well as clarify a few terms that I see commonly thrown around, misused, and just really taken out of context. My goal for this video is that by the end, you leave with some type of clarity on each one of these concepts and terms, as well as a little bit of a history lesson, if you will, and then finally, learn a little bit more about what it is that we do here at Eric Austin. So where I wanted to begin was with what I call the 4 levels of suiting. So number 1 is going to be off the rack. Pretty self-explanatory, but with off the rack suiting, you typically will walk into a store or an establishment, you will purchase a suit, and you can get minimum alterations such as the sleeve length on the jacket, trouser length, trouser waist, very simple, minimal alterations, leg taper, things of that nature. And of course, depending on the establishment, depending on the store, typically in about a week or so, you come back and your garment is done, you're ready to wear it. Off the rack is most oftentimes seen as a budget-friendly option, as well as a time-sensitive option for those that need something a little bit more immediate, and again, don't want to spend too much money. A quality off the rack suit, I would say, could go for anywhere between $500 to about maybe $700. Anything under maybe $300, personally, I'd probably stay away from in most cases. Just those options typically you'll see are maybe not the best as far as quality is concerned, but again, it does depend on the company. So the second form of suiting that I wanted to touch on is made to measure. So this is where things can oftentimes get a little bit tricky and a little bit gray. So with made to measure, I want to touch on first the history of made to measure and what it is. So historically speaking, made to measure was a process where you could come in, choose the fabric, the buttons, and when it comes down to the fit of the garment, you could make very minimal tweaks. And again, this is historically speaking. So for example, if you were to get a made to measure suit, you would get put into what's called a fit garment or a master garment. And again, this is a template-based process where you could then change the jacket length, the side seams, the sleeves, all the same alterations you can do off the rack, with additions to, again, choosing the actual fabric that you want, the buttons, the lining, maybe even certain details on the stitching. But again, you were very limited. Now, moving on to custom suiting. Custom suiting, again, historically speaking, was a step up from made to measure, where you could get into a bit more of the intricacies of the way someone's body is. So for example, you could go over things such as their posture, stooped or erect. You could go over the slope of their shoulders. You could adjust the armhole. You could adjust the hip placement. You could adjust what we call arms to front or arms to back. You could adjust the sleeve circumference. So you get really, really intricate as far as the different measurements that you could change on a garment. To keep it a little bit more simple, made to measure equals template based or some type of a master garment. Custom, traditionally speaking, you would see more body measurements, sometimes a mix of a master garment and body measurements, but more specifically, you get into the details as far as the way a garment fits, like the slope of your shoulder, hip placement, things like that. Now, over the years, of course, with modern technology and advancements, made to measure has become so intricate that the way we use it here at Eric Austin, we almost use it interchangeably. So for example, if a customer, let's say a new client or customer walks in the door, they might say, hey, do you all do made to measure or custom? My answer to them would be that, honestly, we do both. We were able to merge the traditional concepts of made to measure and custom into one very detailed program, allowing us to achieve the best possible fit each and every time. This is something that we use here interchangeably at Eric Austin because in our made to measure program, we do put you in a fit garment or a master garment, but there are so many measurements that we can adjust. Off the top of my head, I believe there's about 120 between the jacket and the trouser that we can adjust, again, in order to achieve the best fit possible. So we'll come back to that in a second, but that leads me to the 4th level of suiting, and that would be bespoke. So bespoke literally means to speak or to be spoken for. Now, the example that I like to give is if you were to purchase, let's say, a Rolls Royce. This is a bespoke experience from start to finish. You can say, hey, I want the headrest to be this color. I want the stitching on the dashboard to be that color. I want the stripe going down the side to be this color. You could really get into a lot of the details. It's very, very similar when it comes to suiting. Now, I will say with the bespoke suiting, you will usually see that level of detail applied more so to the measurements and the fitting, not so much the design options. Now, of course, you can change the stitching and things of that nature, but again, from a historical and traditional standpoint, bespoke suiting is something that is really aimed at achieving the most perfect fit. One thing I always tell my sales professionals and anyone that I'm training, new hires, I tell them we really try not to use the word perfect unless we are doing a bespoke garment. Now, there are situations where you make a made-to-measure or a custom garment, and quite honestly, it looks perfect. But again, I really try not to use that. I really try to save that term for more of a bespoke garment. So sticking on the historical aspects of things, bespoke garments started in London on Savile Row many, many years ago, hundreds of years ago. And this was, again, a way to achieve the best fit possible, basically a perfect fit. And this is a process that from start to finish, in most cases, takes anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks and has multiple fittings. And traditionally in a bespoke fitting, you will see what's called a basted fitting. What happens in a basted fitting is this allows for a client to come in on multiple occasions and see how a garment is going to fit from start to finish. And it allows the tailor, the person that's fitting them, to really deconstruct the garment as freely and easily as possible. So in a basted fitting, there is no lining. You will oftentimes see the stitching, the canvas sometimes on the garment, and it allows the tailor to easily, quite honestly, rip apart the garment, make changes on the spot before there are any final cuts made to that garment. Let me also insert an important caveat here. My personal opinion, I don't really think bespoke is for everyone. And here's what I mean. Bespoke is not only the most extensive, detailed program when it comes to suiting, but similar to that of a Rolls Royce, it is oftentimes the most expensive version of suiting. Now, bespoke garments, typically you'll see range from on the lowest end, the absolute lowest end, usually $2,800 to $3,000. On the highest end, of course, they can go up to 5 figures. Usually the range I would say is between $3,000 to around $10,000 to $12,000. I know that's quite a range, but it does depend on the company. It depends on the history, depends on the tailor. There's a lot of different variables. But going back to my previous point about bespoke not being for everyone, similar again to a Rolls Royce, I would recommend bespoke to those who really want the experience of crafting a garment from start to finish. They really want the experience of saying, hey, I want to see each and every step. I want to know what goes into this. I want to develop a relationship with my tailor. I don't recommend it for everyone, not only because of the cost, but it is more so an experience. And I always say bespoke, if it's something that you have to convince someone to do, it might not be for them. Just as a quick recap, number one, off the rack, great for someone that wants to be a bit more budget friendly, maybe is in a bit of a time crunch, and you can oftentimes, depending on the company, find a pretty good option for what you're looking for. Now, again, with off the rack, you do run into a lot of barriers, and quite honestly, a lot of guys can't buy off the rack, which is why they go the made-to-measure, custom, or bespoke route. And what I mean is sometimes gentlemen who have really long arms or of a certain height, stature, maybe weight, again, just our bodies are different, so off the rack isn't the best option for, quite honestly, a lot of guys, but it does make sense from a budget perspective. Second, made to measure. Again, traditionally speaking, made to measure is a great alternative to off the rack because you can choose your fabric, your buttons, sometimes your lining, and you can make adjustments prior to the garment being made. Number 3 is going to be custom, which again, traditionally speaking, is a step up from made to measure, where you can get a little bit more intricate with a lot of the design options, but more importantly, the way the garment fits. And again, here at Eric Austin, we've kind of merged those concepts into one, which is why we're able to use those terms interchangeably. With over 120 measurements, we can really nail your fit. And then finally, bespoke, which leads me to my big announcement, which I will be making a separate video on in the coming weeks. In January of 2025 here at Eric Austin, we will be offering our Bespoke program. I am extremely excited for this. We've been working hard behind the scenes to get every detail nailed down, and we'll be making a separate video on our Bespoke program in the coming weeks. But in January of 2025, we will be offering Bespoke. I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna touch on that again on its own, but I'm extremely excited and I wanted to go ahead and make that announcement here on YouTube with you all. So in conclusion, I hope this video was extremely beneficial. I also wanted to make sure I took the time to provide a little bit more clarity to each one of these terms and go over what I call the 4 levels of suiting. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as well as let me know any other video ideas that you might have for me or any other topics that you wanted me to touch on. Until next time.